Yep. We'll just call it big CP energy. Yeah, so I'm Anthony Bergen. I live in Provo, Utah, but I'm from North Carolina. I currently work at Brigham Young University as an AV engineer for their 800 plus classroom systems and their events arenas. I have spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy, and I've had it since birth. So obviously, I was born premature, 12 weeks early. Um, Resulting in some brain damage because the oxygen couldn't get to my brain fast enough and it caused CP. And so the doctor said I wouldn't walk and I wouldn't have a functioning life really. But I guess I got lucky and I'm walking now and doing things. But I also think a lot of that plays into the fact that like I've always had this drive to do things and do hard things. And so like I love sports and so I think sports help motivate me to try and be active and as a result I've really overcome the odds. And so I think it's just a blessing. So when I was younger, I think it was a lot on my family. First of all, being born premature, you ask any prospective mother, and being born premature is not an ideal thing because that usually means that there are problems, whether with the person who's giving birth or the child. Being a caretaker for a child with a disability, it's already hard enough to be a caretaker for a child in general, and you add a disability to it, and it makes it a little bit more tricky. So a good example of this would be I had surgery where they put a cast all the way up my legs and they barred my feet together. And we lived in an apartment with stairs. So I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and my mother had to carry me up and down the stairs to give me a bath. And I don't know about you guys, but walking up and down the stairs with a 60-pound child in your hand with two casts, that's a pretty tough feat. And just all the maintenance and management you'd have to go to help a child get through that, I imagine it was pretty difficult for them, but I think that they did it out of love. And and so I think that I'm grateful for them for that because I wouldn't be the person I am today without that. And so I mean I grew up like any other kid. I went to school and uh, played recreational sports and did other things. I really think that helped my CP not develop into something that put me into either a wheelchair or crutches or some type of mobility device. Because I grew up playing those sports, I loved them. But as I got older, I become more aware. Hey, after I play basketball or after I play football, it's uh, it's too hard on my body. And the next day, I would be stiff, my back would hurt, I could barely walk. So I learned that movements where I jumped and twisted and landed and movements that were high impact weren't necessarily the best for me. And so I adapted to doing CrossFit movements and working and doing CrossFit as a sport where I competed. That seemed to be more appropriate for my lifestyle because even though there was some high impact, it was a little bit more in a controlled environment. Whereas basketball, every play looks different. Right now, I'm actually having to use a little sock aid to where you put like a sock on this like plastic thing, and then you pull it onto your foot. It's difficult because my hips just have a hard time turning to rest my foot up on my knee. And it's just a lot more comfortable. I don't get out of breath when I'm trying to do it. I'm not like fighting the most stiff muscles in the world, and they're not even that stiff compared to other people with CP, but it just helps. typical day. So I usually get up at around 5 a.m. And I try to either go work out or work depending on how busy work is. So CrossFit is usually workouts that are functional fitness that usually require a variety of workouts in any given a variety of movements in any given workout. And so I would go into the gym and there would be all these different movements, but half of them I couldn't do because my range of motion or my balance or anything else like that. And so I would often go into the gym, and my coach had already thought about something that I could do in as a replacement movement for the current movement that I couldn't do. So, for instance, well, a simple one would be squats. Instead of doing a full depth squat, I would squat to a box. So I get the same amount of intensity, it's just to a box instead of full depth. And that maintains my safety and it also gives me a good workout. If there were days where I was spastic and my back wasn't feeling good, I wouldn't do what the rest of the class was doing. My coach would just be like, "All right, let's just have you want to bench press a day or work on something else?" And I said, "Sure." And so those look different for me. One thing that I really had to learn as someone with a disability is that I do think working out is important for people with disabilities. Movement is medicine, and people who can move should take the opportunity to move because it helps for CP at least. It helps keep the muscles. It helps keep the muscles and tendons from getting so tight because you're moving them daily. And so one thing that I had to learn was even though I could do it like everyone else, if I tried, it would destroy the rest of my day because my body would be so fatigued and spastic from the workout. So it was really important for me to modify to my needs so that one, I could have a good workout and I could move. Two, I could get the same mental effect that everyone else got from working out. And three, I could get the same group effect from working out with other people and being included in the group as we worked out together. So my job, it's changed. It's changed over the years, but throughout the years, I've pulled cable from point A to point B, whether it's getting up in the ceiling or crawling down in a hole. I've carried projectors up ladders. I've carried speakers up ladders. I've also opted to have someone else do it because I didn't feel safe doing it. There can sometimes be a lot of walking, a lot of standing. When I work football games and basketball games, it's just a lot of movement and a lot of get this fixed now. I work for about 8 to 10 hours, and then I come home and then I go and coach for 2 hours a few times a week. 2 to 3 times a week, I'll coach CrossFit and help athletes. And then after that, I come back home and just do my thing. And so I love sports. I love eating. I love people. I just think they're all good things. Those are probably the most important things in my life, aside from my faith.
What's one of the biggest challenges you've had to face in your life?
As a person with a condition that I have, or a person with a disability, I think what I've had to learn is to have grace with myself. Different days look different for me, and it's not my fault. It's just because of the condition that I have, and my CP, and so I've learned to look at life with grace a little bit and be understanding towards myself. If some days I'm more tight than others, some days I can't get up and down as easy. One of the ways that I've overcome that is just by giving myself grace and realizing it's not my fault that I'm this way. It's a condition that I have, and there's actually nothing I can do about it. And growing up, I had a physical therapist who would come to my house and work with me. And soon I got to the point to where I was pretty functionally independent, and so I didn't have physical therapy for years. Fast forward it to now, I have physical therapy, but I only get with my insurance 25 visits a year. With CP for me, physical therapists will give us workouts to do to stretch or to maintain strength. And for me specifically, it's very hard for me to stretch things like my hamstrings because they're so tight that when I do stretch them, even with a strap, that it puts so much strain on my body to stretch them with the strap that it actually causes more problems because I'm straining in other places to stretch them, if that makes sense. And so um, it's a fine. Physical therapists are very talented in the way that they can manipulate and move the body to stretch the muscles that they want. And quite frankly, it's impossible for me to do what they can do. And so when I've went to physical therapists, I think that they've been great. And I have this physical therapist that I specifically like, and he's worked with people with CP. And so he knows exactly how to manipulate the body and when to stop and when to start and how to work against the spasticity, or maybe not so much against it, but with it, so that he can optimize the the stretch and the strength. Um, and so those two in correlation actually have really been a benefit to me because it's saved money, and money is not an infinite resource, at least for me. That's a hard question. Um, I mean, I guess ultimately, I wish people would be willing to ask because, like, when I think about myself with CP, yes, I have CP. However, it's not something that defines me. It's something that's part of my life, but it doesn't define me. And it does affect my life, but not to the point to where I'm like, not to the point to where I'm like going to like give up or anything or just like say whatever. I'm not trying. So just to be the willingness to be able to ask about things, because I think the more you ask and get the person's personal experience, the more people will be able to understand um, my condition. I think CP is one of those conditions that's like autism, where it's on the spectrum. And so you can't just read about CP and say, yeah, it's the same for everybody. I think asking about it and getting information about it from the person themselves, um, that's what I wish people would do more of.